All right.
Okay. There's Bev. Hello, Bev.
Hello.
And Tamsin. All right. Okay. As usual, our plan is to do 30 minutes of my presenting a focus point. I guess that's appropriate for tonight, so that we can take a look at how things need to go when you are a coach and when you are a member. So it's going to involve both, so that we can make sure that the clubs get where they need to be. And after we do that, then we will spend the rest of our time having a discussion. We'll go through the workbook and see how we can answer the questions and maybe other questions that pop into your head while we're doing this. So let's get started. So why are we here? We're the doctor, well, except for Barry Doctor. We're not that doctor, but we're the doctor who's working with a patient who knows she's not feeling well, but doesn't know why. The easiest thing to do would be telling the patient that it's all in her head and take 2 members and call me next week. No, that's not how that works when you're working with a club. Take 2 members. They don't know where to start. They don't know how to prioritize their next steps. They may not follow through if they don't understand the purpose of what they are trying to do. They may see each other weekly or bi-weekly, and in some cases only monthly. And every time they come back to the same problems that they had the last meeting. So let's go here. All right. So we're going to focus on keeping focus. All right. There are 3 stages of membership that we need to be aware of. Okay, this is going to be crucial when we are looking through how to maintain the focus of our clubs. Okay, there's the new outsider, you know, the ones that are just taking a peek, and they may or may not join the club. There's the initial integration where they have joined the club, but now they're learning the culture and the personalities of the group. And then there's the new insider, where the person has been there for a little bit and they're starting to adapt to the uniqueness of the club. As a coach, being new to the group, you have the advantage in that you have an outsider's perspective. What you know is your home club or any of the other clubs that you belong to, and you're feeling brand new in this group. As a coach, you don't work for them. And you also don't do the work for them. Okay. You make use of your outsider's perspective as you get used to the meeting structure, the influencers, the culture of the group. How do you tell if a person is an influencer? Well, in one of the stories that John Maxwell tells, he was trying to influence this itty bitty church that he was in, and he would come in and he'd say, okay, I'm the pastor and therefore you have to listen to me and I'm always right. And he went in and just bombed. But he discovered that whenever he asked a question or whenever he gave some direction, everybody in their board meetings would look to this one guy named Carl. And every time they looked at Carl, Carl would either agree or disagree. That was the influencer. So what he started doing is he started meeting with the influencer and then asking him questions. How would you go about it? How would you put it up? If I ask for some input, can you bring this up? And once he started working with the influencer, the rest of the group started following along, because Carl was wise and he knew how to present things to the group that might not have come as easily from an outsider. So you look for your influencers in the group, and you also check out the culture of the group. You look for areas of expertise within the club. One is great doing events, one is great at mentoring new members, one is great at marketing the group. Or maybe, as this happens a lot, nobody is good at any of those activities. Then they have to find a way to develop those hidden talents. You can offer information on something that they're interested in. You find their interests first. Do you have an interest in helping other members? One of the things that we did as Road to DTM is we knew that once we got our DTM that we weren't going to quit the group. The purpose that we developed for ourselves is that we made it to DTM, we can show you how, and we made it our purpose in the club to take new members under our wing and help them get to DTM by mentoring them and offering them opportunities that they couldn't get in their home clubs. It was obviously a advanced club where that's what their focus was. And then we maintained the focus of that group as the educational focus. So it wasn't just another advanced club. It was an advanced club that focused on improving the members as they went through pathways, or before that in the legacy program. How do you get through the program to get to this point? And we worked on the educational side of that. So when it came to evaluations, when it came to choosing paths, when it came to explaining new stuff, that's what this group focused on. And once they started focusing on that, they were able to attract more members simply because they said, oh, well, if you want to get your DTM, try using this as a tool. So that uniqueness developed into a niche. So since you belong to one or more clubs, you can see what makes the club that you're coaching different. They might not. You know that they have a unique approach to how they do any type of club mentoring where they're working with the people, and so they make them comfortable getting ready to speak. They may have a specialized thing for, well, we have one that has a game night, and they capitalize on word games and the type of stuff that improves vocabulary. We have some prison clubs where if you offer donuts, you get more members. That it's a kind of thing that you develop as you're working with the club. You find out what the uniqueness of the club that you're working with has and how they can make it work for them. Okay, so you capitalize on what they do well, and then you have to remind them what they do well. So then you look for the little items, the little quirks that tend to keep people from joining the club, the little off-putting characteristics that keep the members from inviting more people may not be obvious to the members because you can't see the picture if you're in the frame. So what happens there is, like, for instance, there is a club that really, really enjoys doing speeches, but they don't follow any type of plan. And as a result, people that join the club get up and do speeches, and they may practice their English, but they don't move along and reach the goals that they want to reach. They don't get the proficiency to stand up in front of a group or to design a really, really good visual aid program, or to give a keynote speech or anything like that, because they're not focused on any type of path that will take them there. So that might put people off. You might run into a group where they insist on a dress code, and or you might run into a group that feels so comfortable with the people they're in that everybody that comes in feels like an outsider, and they never get into the third side where they're a new insider, where they are integrated into the group. They always feel like the outsider, and that might be a little off-putting. So you look for those things too, and that is one of the things that as a coach you can see because you're an outsider's perspective. Okay. All right. So once you have been to a few meetings, you begin to see the dynamics of the club. You can recognize the influencers and the followers, the leaders that move the group, and the ones that sit back and watch the show can make or break your efforts to bring the club to distinguish. So yes, there are leaders who are not interested in leading, who nevertheless influence the group into apathy. They sit back and watch and say, well, you can't possibly make this club move unless I'm involved. And we have seen situations like that. If you have one of those in there, you have to make sure that they are looking at an opportunity rather than a challenge. Okay, you are not challenging their position in the club, but they may not see it that way. In that case, what you have to do when you're working with the influencers, and they're the ones that will be doing the side tracks during the speeches or during the meeting, the ones that are drawing attention away from the project or from the speaker or the evaluator, or even, you know, the coach, if the coach has got a speaking role or is trying to move the club into something else, they will be the ones that are the detractors. They're the ones that saying, oh, what makes you think this is going to work? Those are the Carls that you have to take into account. And you say, you know, I know you have been a member of this group forever, and you know the ins and outs of this group. What would you suggest that I do? Because something that I might present might come better from an outsider than an insider. And if you can help me stage it so that it doesn't look like I'm criticizing the group, because I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that the group continues even if I'm not here. And I assume that you're planning on not keeping me around after I'm done. Is that right? That is one way. You have to just walk on eggs around these people, because if they are influencing the group and they are trying to be subversive against you, you're not going to get anything done. But if you have them on your side, and if they're worth keeping because they're really good for the group, they keep the group together, they're the glue that keeps the group together, you have to find a way to get them more involved by working with them one-on-one and making sure that they are right where they need to be. They are the top dog, and you're not going to be the guy with a whip. You're the one that says, okay, we're going to go over there. And if they agree to go over there, they will take you. And it may go much faster than you ever expect. Okay. Okay, how about that? I didn't know I could do that. Okay. All right. Use your newness to the group to get them to help you make small changes to start with. If, for instance, you want to introduce them to a written agenda to the meeting, and the VPE says he doesn't know how to work the free toast agenda, offer a time when you can get together to play with the program. If they have problems setting up a hybrid meeting, ask them if they know Glenn has a Zoom training session on Tuesdays, and to ask him for help. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to pose the right questions. As long as they know that you are not going to try and give them all the instructions and tell them what to do, then you can show them where to find stuff. And that helps keep the focus on making the club work. Ask your influencers whom they would recommend for certain projects, like coming up with events or speech crafts or promotions on social media. Many times your influencers will then volunteer for what they feel is their expertise. Follow up frequently, not to check on them, but for them to walk you through their process so you can share that with your home club, even if you already know how to do this stuff. I remember we were doing a speech craft with one group, and we were having problems getting it all together and everything. It just wasn't working because we were in COVID and we weren't quite sure how everything was going to work, because we'd have to do this all online, and we weren't making any progress. So we followed up with this volunteer who, she had spreadsheets out her ears. There were just so many spreadsheets. And because she did that, she developed her own speech craft to work until they had something official from TMI. She followed through all of that, and she walked us through how and why it worked. And it was so slick, and it was so quick to fill in the gap that seemed to take forever for people to figure out how to do the speech craft, that we had, I think, 3 speech crafts before the official one came out. She had this type of influence on us, and we learned some ways to go and get things done that we hadn't considered before. She was also willing to train people on other aspects of pathways that would allow us to not have to worry about how we were going to train people on pathways, because a lot of us were not as well versed as she was. Did that make her feel very important? Yes, it did. Did she continue to do the work after the job was done? Yes, she did. And she was available for people to ask questions and everything. She was top dog. Okay. You don't want to fight these influencers, because they will win and they'll take the club down with them. They will quit and leave you with another hole to fill, or they will quit and take others with them. So instead of just filling one hole, you're filling 4. To be sure, they may not need to quit to get the club moving again, but don't start at that conclusion. Sometimes it's necessary to allow them to quit because they have no intention of backing you up or saving the club. And if they can't be the top dog, they don't want to be any dog. Okay. If you are on the right side of the influencers, they may make it possible to move from small changes to major ones. In addition, because most of the influencers in your club will be seasoned veterans, you may learn some techniques and pick up some new ideas that you can use. And because they are influencers, you may get more of their circle of friends into the club. Most people will stay in the club due to the people that are members there, rather than the education that we offer. They will join for the education, but they will stay for the people. Okay, so once we have figured out who the influencers are and figured out the culture of the club and taken notes about what little tweaks we need to make and how we need to make them, you become a fully integrated member. You know the quirks and the culture of the group well. Now, you don't have to be a paid member of the club, but that means they have accepted you as a person that shows up for every meeting and contributes and does speeches and fills roles and stuff like that. But at this point, you are part of the club. Okay. You know the quirks and the culture of the group well. This is where personal bias comes in. It becomes possible that after you become an intimate part of the group, you will either love it or hate it. You may be so involved in the group that you lose your focus, which makes changes in the way the group behaves that brings in and keeps new members on a regular basis. You learn their inside jokes, their approach to problems, their typical style. They may even have a dress code. How do you direct change when you're just another member? What if they need major perception changes? What if after having come to several meetings, you find you cannot fit into this club? Have you developed an adversarial relationship with a club? How can they become self-sustaining and healthy if they don't have a healthy relationship with a coach? If you're not a major influencer in the group, how do you convince the person that is that some things need to change? Okay, so let's take a look at these questions. How do you direct change when you're just another member? Have any of you had to deal with that?
Well, since no one else is talking, despite my experience, no, I don't really have an answer to this.
Repeat the question.
How do you direct change when you're just another member?
I think you have to ask them what change they want and how they think it could happen, even though it might be the same idea you've got. I think it's better from coming from the influencers or even just the also rans, kind of just the people in the back row.
Okay.
What about leading by example?
Leading by example.
You know, trying to show them something new that they might have thought about. And if it works, great, they adopt it. If they don't, they reject it.
I understand that you added an agenda to one club that you were working with.
Right.
So how did it go over?
It went well because it was a solution to a problem they had. When I first showed up to the meetings, they would scramble to, you know, assemble the meeting and put it together. So I got them one, and I brought samples with me, and I said, let's put together an agenda for next time and let it up. And we wrote it all out and who wants to do what, and then they had it. And then next time they saw that they were able to start their meeting much faster, and that became the thing they did at the end of the meeting for next time, instead of at the beginning of the meeting and then start late. So
Okay.
that was just one where I suggested something and they liked it and it worked out.
That's good.
And then the other side effect of that was when the visitors showed up, they looked much more polished. They were prepared, and it made a better impression. And I think that led some of the visitors to stay.
Okay, good. How about you, Rob?
You know, I think this is a semi-common mistake area directors sometimes make, and I did it. My home club, everybody came to the front for table topics. And one of the clubs that I visited, people did table topics by standing up at their seat and not going to the front. And I remember trying to kind of ask that question of, hey, why aren't you guys doing it right? And it wasn't that they weren't doing it right. They were doing their thing, which was different than my club's thing. And so one of the lessons I learned pretty early on was not to assume that just because something works in one place that it will work for another group. There are some semi-universal truths like the written agenda versus just being out there. But even that one, I've seen a club where they like to just put a written agenda up on the screen and they don't print any copies out, which I found awkward, but that club seemed to like it. So sometimes it's about not pushing the change that may not be necessary just because you think it's the right thing. It's first determining what is the right thing. And then, like you talked about, the influencer kind of going that path is a whole lot better than standing in front of the room and saying, I know best.
Yes. Okay. All right. So have you ever been involved in a club or from a coaching standpoint where you felt you would never fit into the club?
I have.
Okay.
When I was area director, I had a club where about half the members were professional speakers. And they would end each meeting with who's speaking next week and where, so we can support each other. And here I was first time area director, and I'm supposed to be leading these professional speakers. And one of the things they refused to do is they did not have an counter. They didn't feel they needed it. And I heard all their crutch words, but I couldn't get the point across to them that it might help them.
So how did you deal with that?
The counter thing, I talked to the previous area director and chose to let it go. And in terms of them being professional speakers, in some cases, I tried to utilize them as almost like a mini speaker bureau for other clubs in my division and get them out into other clubs to do more speeches or repeat speeches they've even already done. Because sometimes they were honing new material for their paid gigs.
Oh,
So trying to
everybody
use them
loves
as
that type of
repeat-
practice, don't they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a guy that was like
You
the
have to pick your
godfather of
battles then.
speaking. You do have to pick your battles. This guy, Bill Gove, who was, I guess some people thought was the godfather of public speaking, and they named the club after this guy. And this guy had attended the club meetings. It was a big deal. So it's like, I'm not sure how I'm going to influence them when I was going into it.
Okay. So the lack of an counter and everything, what would happen if they got new members into their club, people who weren't all professional speakers? That how were they able to train these people to be better professional speakers if they didn't have an counter grammarian type person?
That was the other thing, that they didn't believe in the sandwich evaluations. They believed in tough love, which horrified me for the guests and the new speakers, because they were scaring people away. And I had to show them that. They didn't believe me when I told them. It's like, what happened to Joe? What about Amy? What about this one and that one? Well, they never came back. I don't know. I guess they didn't like Toastmasters. It's like, no, 3 of them joined other clubs. It's just not your club.
Okay, now you remember when we were talking about avatars
Mhm.
that first week? Okay, so their avatar is somebody who already is a professional or near professional speaker and not a beginner, then it would seem. And by scaring away people that had come to visit, they might have tainted their visitors' view of all the other clubs. And so they should preface something in their introduction to the club that we cater to people that are on their way to becoming professional speakers. And
Yes. The other challenge with them is it's acceptable for public speakers to get away with some stuff that's not acceptable as a Toastmaster. Like crutch words, they say that adds authenticity. Use them. It's okay.
yeah, the one that we ran into with so many of the professional speakers is am I right or am I right? And I'm thinking that's not a choice. But they used it, and it wasn't just relegated to one guest speaker. It seemed to be picked up by whole bunches of them, and they'd come in and they'd say that, and then Mark and I would just drop our heads and, oh, come on, really, oh, stop. And they would use that every single time. They would make a point, and then they would say, am I right or am I right? And then they'd make another point, and then they'd say that, and it's right, you know, yeah. And so it was rather distracting to people who have some type of background in speaking, and it was even more distracting to people who had background in what they were saying, because sometimes, you know, I say, am I right or am I right? And then we're thinking, you're wrong, you're wrong. But we couldn't do that.
There's another
Okay.
one they do that I consider a crutch word now. They start a sentence with either the word listen or the
Yeah.
word look. And politicians are using that all the time now.
Oh dear. So it's a real problem that Toastmasters do not have the power of directed lightning, so that, you know, you say that, you say that, and you know, and but okay. So our next thing is the blind eye syndrome. Come here, there it is. Okay. All right. The blind eye syndrome is one of those things that, well, most of the problems that a club manifests are going to be brought on by the blind eye syndrome. It's the most common problem. We've always done it this way. And the hardest lesson people have to learn is this: if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always got. You want to avoid that blind eye like the plague, but you don't know what it is. It's something that they consider normal, something that has come back through their history, which they may have accidentally put into place, and then it was accepted as law. Okay. There's a story of the woman that was teaching her daughter how to cook a ham. And she says, well, you get the roaster out, and then you cut off this much of the ham and you put that in the refrigerator, and the rest of it you put in there, and then you cook it. And so she said, okay, why? He said, well, that's the way my mama did it. So she goes to grandma. She says, grandma, how come you cut off the end of the ham and put it in the refrigerator? She says, well, actually, that's the way my mama did it. So she went to great grandma. She said, great grandma, why do you cut off the end of the ham before you put it in there? She says, so it'll fit in the roaster. See, and yet that was not the problem the rest of these people did. They just cut it off because that's what you did. Now, we run into that in a lot of sessions when we're working with different clubs. This is, well, we've always done it this way. We've always signed up people at the end of the night. We've always had people sign up for their roles, and then they don't show up, or we've never done the Pledge of Allegiance, or we've always done the Pledge of Allegiance, or we've always have 4 table topics, or we, you know, they have it's a routine that they go through, or a perception that they have that actually doesn't have any basis in fact or in background that helps the club. It's just, that's what we've always done. So now you want to, well, oh, I'm going to have to change this. You want to avoid that blind eye like the plague, and we know that people don't avoid plagues. So find a different thing that does that. To maintain your focus and that of the club, there are several different ways. You can present the moments of truth to the club. Okay. Aha, I am the coach. I am presenting the moments of truth. And there's a problem with that. You are the ultimate assessor of the club's strengths and weaknesses. So what have they learned? Well, oh, we've seen this one before. Oh, moments of truth. It's so boring. And that doesn't help the truth. What you have to do then is look at the moments of truth through different eyes. So you say, all right, we're going to do moments of truth. Yes. Okay. Since you're the Sergeant at Arms, why don't you present the part about how do you welcome visitors in? And you can do that next week. And the Sergeant of Arms does that, and it's his specialty. How does he invite people in? How does he make them feel comfortable? And then you have your secretary say, what kind of stuff do we need to do to make sure that people feel comfortable, make sure that they have an agenda, make sure that they sign the guest book, make sure that we get their intake information so we can send them further information about our club and our events. Okay, how do we make them feel welcome? Then you have your VPE say, okay, this is how we mentor people. And each week, so it's not a moment of truth, it's 5 minutes of where you're thinking a truth that can help your club, and go through it that way. They have some skin in the game. They are looking at their own club. What do we do well? Well, okay, what can we do better? Oh, I've got an idea. We had the TLIs, the leadership training, and we got together with the secretaries, and the secretaries were saying, well, you know, we're just the secretaries. And I said, oh, are you kidding? Don't you realize you're the ones that hold the clubs together? You know they're going to forget completely what speech they gave 2 weeks ago. You know they're not going to remember the event that is coming up in a couple of weeks. You know that they're not going to send thank you cards to all of those people that brought goodies to the last meeting. You know this. You realize how important you are. And they're going, oh, us? Really? So then they started looking at things that they could do to work with their clubs, and they came up with some really innovative ideas on how to make sure that everybody knows what's going on in the next meeting and who's talking and what they're talking about, and make arrangements for guest speakers and all of the types of things that we do there. So this kind of opens that blind eye so that they're not looking at things that they've always done. They're looking why these are things that they've always done. This way they've learned something. So make sure that the first one to give a moment of truth is your major influencer, because they will have some good fodder for thought and make people think, oh, you know, there's a way that I could do my job differently that would make it better. Okay. This is what we do best about our meetings. This is how we can improve. This is what we do best with visitors. And this is how we can get them to return for the next meeting. This is how we can improve. Okay. It means more to them if it comes from them. Remember, if they say it, it's true. If you say it, they doubt it. Okay. Always remind them of the things that they do well, publicize them, and brag on them. Now, you can do that through Facebook. You can do that in your division or area newsletter if you have one. Bring up things that they do well. Oh, I was at this club for their special meeting and they did a murder mystery. You should have been there. Well, there were 3 people there, but nobody's going to know that. Then they will get some props on that, and they'll say, oh, what did you do for your murder meeting? Oh, well, we killed somebody, and then wish you had been there. Can you do it again so we could see it? So then when the initial changes of your club when the initial changes your club has instituted begin to fade away, that means that they've lost focus. You have to keep reminding them of their successes. Remember, you're trying to change the culture of the group, and that takes time and patience. So how do you retain your focus? You have to have a long-term plan. That friend that I was telling you about that did the speech crafts, she has spreadsheets of everything she wants to accomplish with the group. She had spreadsheets about everything she wants to accomplish for herself, but she does not share these spreadsheets with her club. She has a document that describes the changes made and the results of the changes. So this is one of them that, okay. Change the format of the agenda, August 15, 2020. Members signing up for roles ahead of the meeting, no table topics, only meetings. So that was one of the things they decided they were going to do. They got to the point where they'd show up and they wouldn't have a speaker and they'd have to do a table topic meeting. And they decided they were never going to do table topics only meetings. Okay, so 2 members, as a result of this, got their level 1 designations and 1 got a level 3. Okay, then the second change they made, they sent out invoices for dues a month before the deadline. So that was done September 12 of 20. Dues were collected before September 30th, and they got an early bird award. Okay, then she wrote out planned Halloween event. That was August 29 of 20. Promotion started the first week of September. Murder in the Zoom room attracted 3 guests. 2 returned, 1 joined, and the second one joined a week earlier, or a week later. So you see, this is what she put out to them, was the log of what things happened, and not the fact that she had planned this out all the way through 2 years to make sure that everybody got their all of their educational awards done and their paperwork done. So they wanted to make sure that they did that. They never saw her agenda, but they developed their own. Then they looked forward to positive steps in growing their club. She posted the document up every meeting. So this is what we've done so far. Make sure you establish and make sacred your planning time with your officers so they remain focused and don't get complacent with the changes. Complacency leads to backsliding. It's a group effort. You can't be the only one focused on improving the group. You don't have a magic wand, much as we'd like to. How would you resolve your purpose if you lost focus? So you got to remember why the members join. Most people will not join an organization like Toastmasters in order to fill a quota or build a club or establish success parameters. They want something to improve themselves. As coaches, we need to stress that the best interests of the members involves keeping the club healthy, which means growing membership and improving communication, okay, and leadership skills. Can't a person learn more from the variety of speakers rather than the same 2 or 3? Probably. Can't a person improve more from the variety of evaluators? Is it too much to ask of a person to hold 2 offices in a club? Probably. Is it too much to ask everyone in the club to hold an office every year? Probably too much. Will recruiting and mentoring people give us the opportunity to improve our communications? Well, how many times in the real world do we need to involve people in bigger projects? So growing the club is the members' best interest. So remember why you're here. Okay. So if every time you meet with your officers, you start out with saying, okay, what do we need to do to improve the meetings? What have we done so far? And then she would read that past log and then offer to help with marketing, brainstorm events, do flyers, meetups, specialized topic meetings. Have a time during the meeting when you get feedback from the members and share what you see as great about the group and what 1 or 2 things you need to focus on right now. Okay. Most of all, be an enthusiastic cheerleader. You already love this group. Why keep it from the rest of the community? Okay. All right.
Before you go on,
Yes.
Rebecca, may I?
Go ahead.
All right. I want to go back to the moments of truth. That I am a club coach for 2 clubs, and they are definitely different, totally different in regards to what goes on. I did the moments of truth, but I gave them examples of what not to do. And they had to like give me examples of how it could be worked out. And so that's how I handled one of my clubs. And the other club, I was able to just give them the information because they were doing everything right, in my opinion. And COVID kind of hit them hard, as it has many of our clubs. But I truly believe that you have to definitely do your clubs differently. And well, like I said, I gave them examples. And one example was how is it that, the first part of it isn't inviting. And this actually happened to me as a new Toastmaster. I went and visited a club and I was ignored, totally ignored, until someone came in who knew who I was. And then all of a sudden, they all came to me, rushing to me, because the influencer knew me. And I was like, oh my goodness. By that time, it's like, don't talk to me. I don't want to deal with you. And guess what? I never went back. But I think that you have to handle each club differently. And that's what I do. I see what needs to be done. And I know, the people, because I get to know them. I just don't walk in the door and say, hey, I'm coming to the coach. I'm coming as your coach. They know that I'm coming, but I don't just take one time to review, because you don't know the first time around of going in exactly everything that is going on. You have to go several times to be able to see who that influencer or influencers are. I had another, as an area director, I went to a club and it was colder than cold. And I mean, I felt the freeze. And I'm like, what's going on? And of course, it took me several times to be able to figure out what was going on. And then I realized who the person was. And they came to me and they says, the last area director here dogged us out. We don't want y'all. And I had to end up telling them, and I would have done it. I said, give me a chance. Be able to prove you that everybody is not the same. Give me a chance. And they gave me a chance. And I threw them a carrot. I told them, if I do it, I promise I will make you a homemade pound cake. It started coming down. Their barriers started coming down a little bit. And guess what? I didn't have to make that pound cake for them.
I would have made it for him anyway. So, yeah, you guys.
Well, I made them cake, but it was like toward the end when they had their celebration.
Yep. Put candles in it. Okay. You can put your hand down. How do you perceive your club's main barriers to reaching their destination? This is one of the things that you look at from an outsider's perspective. So how do you perceive either the club you're in, which needs some members and you don't have a coach, or the club that you're coaching? How do you perceive your club's main barriers to reaching their destination?
I personally don't look at them and say that they can't do it. In everything that I say and do, I says, we can do this. We can actually get this done. Yes, it's going to take some work. And guess what? It's not just one person. It's not our membership. The VP of membership. It's not the VPPR. It's everybody. Everybody has to be able to participate in making sure that you get out of the doghouse. I'll just say that. And I think that this round, because things have kind of lessened as far as COVID in the state of Nebraska, that they have more opportunities because people are tired, you know, behind everything that happened in COVID, but they have more opportunities that they did not have before because people were shut down. I was tired of being left in the house by myself for months and months and months. But overall, I think that you have to definitely, as I said before, treat each club different.
Mhm.
And what is good here may not work for over here. And I have found that out over the years. What works for one club won't work for another club, and you just have to, try to figure it out and
Sure.
ask the questions, and don't be afraid to ask the questions. And if you're not getting it from the lead, go and ask the people that aren't, because sometimes those people that are the so-called influencers, they may be influencers, but the rest of the membership may not be liking their way of doing things.
Mhm. Okay. Amy?
Yes, thank you. Am I still muted? I'm not still muted, am I? No, I'm not. Good. I was, in answer to your earlier question, our biggest barrier is figuring out, like you were talking about last week, and I'm sorry I didn't have as good a connection last week. Lesson learned, use my phone if I can. Anyway, figuring out who that avatar is, what exactly is our need, where is our pool of people we can draw from, and what are the different needs we can be serving. We really don't seem, I might as well just say it, since you all know this anyway. NMC did just move to at least partially on-campus classes. So, well, I don't know about them, but I don't absolutely have them. So we pretty much seem to be without a purpose. And the people who do come, it consists entirely of old veterans who are all in multiple clubs and serving multiple roles. So we're not really serving anyone at all except ourselves. I'm just kind of reflecting on out loud. Although that may change, as we did just get a new member recruited, our first one in many years, I think. So hopefully at the next meeting that will start to turn around. Okay, I'll stop talking now.
Thank you, Amy.
Mhm.
Vicky?
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. My biggest challenge, or my club's biggest challenge, is that everyone thinks that everything is fine. At the moment, I'm in the midst of writing a proposal that I'll be delivering at an executive meeting tonight. And what my proposal is to try and use social media strategies to grow the club. At the moment, our base number is 13, but here in the part of Australia that I live in, we've only just come out of lockdown this week, and we're all still working on Zoom with our meetings. So getting guests to come along is a challenge. And we also live in quite a small area where there are 4 clubs. So that there are challenges there. What I would like what I'm trying to do is, with our 13 members, we also only have 7 members who are attending regularly. There are 6 people who just don't want anything to do with Zoom. And so there is a huge challenge. And what I'm pointing out in my proposal is that on our agenda, there are 20 roles during the meeting for 7 people to achieve or to take up. So what we're getting is, in my opinion, and I don't know that until I get to this exec meeting tonight, is burnout. I think burnout is a big challenge. And that's where I'm at the moment with my concerns for my home club.
Is it possible to do a hybrid meeting?
Not at the moment. The rooms that we use aren't able to be accessed.
We had to face this when we decided we were going to go to a hybrid meeting. We couldn't find a place to go. Our original meeting place would not accept groups anymore. And we had to find a new place to get together. And it ended up, well, how far is Gretna from here? What, 15 miles? 20 miles? I don't know.
Halfway to Colorado.
No, it's not. It is a.
It's just down the road for me. I'm right, it's right
Yeah.
over here.
Show off.
And a half a world away for me.
Yeah, there you go.
I was just in Elkhorn a few minutes ago.
There you go.
So yeah, so to get to that meeting, we have to leave almost an hour early. But that's in part because I'm one of the techies for the hybrid. We have to get there and get set up ahead of time so that we can have people coming in via Zoom before the start of the meeting.
Mhm. So, yeah, now Tamsin asks if it would be able to combine a meeting with another club. So you could have meet with your club and a guest club together to give more people a chance to do that type of thing and make it an event. So that this is unusual. We never do this.
You know,
we are
another
doing-
thing too, when Vicky was talking about burnout for some of these clubs, that's a real issue, especially if the club is suffering from low membership. One thing you can do that kind of reinvigorates the club and shows them another way of doing things is to get a group of experienced Toastmasters or maybe a whole nother club and say, let's go give them a vacation. Let's go visit this struggling club and let's do the meeting for them. Treat them like the guests, like they can sit in on it. It's their meeting, but we'll do all the roles so they can pretend that they're visiting and not have to do all that work. So they can enjoy a meeting one time. And you might show them a couple things that your club does a little differently that they might adopt, or might show them that an agenda helps or whatever. But the fact that I don't have to do two roles, I can just show up and do my speech or just worry about table topics, gives them a break. It might reinvigorate them, give them some new ideas. So burnout's a scary one. And if you can do that and get some help, get some experienced Toastmasters to show up occasionally. On Zoom, it's easy, but in person, it's a little harder, but people are willing to do that. There's lots of district people that will go, Floy and many others. Mark's been to several in person. He's helped us out many times. So don't be afraid to ask.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're planning, because we meet on a Monday night. There's a 5th Monday in November. So we've
Okay.
invited another club along for a speechathon. So we'll have table topics.
Awesome. That'll
Yeah.
be fun.
And 3 speakers from each club plus the table topics, and then sharing evaluations as well. So we've got that. And we're coming up to our 40th anniversary. So that's another thing that I'm going to talk about tonight is, start the planning for that and have an open house meeting. So just trying to reinvigorate and get some members, get some guests coming through the door.
Okay.
Food helps too. Pizza and donuts, something like
You might
Provide
come
your
all
own.
the way to Australia just for the donuts. Right?
You're welcome.
Tamsin.
Thank you. I just wanted to elaborate a little bit. We're doing a couple of different things here in District 7, which is Oregon, Washington, California. A little bit of both Washington and California. 2 different things. One is similar to what Scott, we're actually trying it out in one of the areas. We also are having the burnout issues with some of the smaller clubs, and what we have what they're proposing is, and I don't remember the fancy name. Sorry, it's been a very long week and it's only Monday. But what they're doing is they're trying to get the clubs to do an open house, and they're bringing in members from another club, but it's not just for the open house. They've got the promise that they will stay for 3 additional weeks. So the member from those other clubs would come in, be that extra member or be that person cheering them on in the open house. And then for the subsequent weeks after that, stay there and again, help out with the different roles and help out with those things. Because sometimes what happens is you have all these wonderful people and guests that come in to help you during the open house. And then your guest comes the week after and notices, oh, I was expecting 30 people and there's 4. So it's something now, it's either a club adopts another club, which as the club coach chair, I actually indicated that probably won't work, that a whole club would adopt, but we're trying to find people in each one of the clubs, 1 or 2 of them that would be willing to say, hey, I can step up and do that for 1 week. Another thing is, Vicki, I believe you said you're in Australia. Could you find a club that meets the same time in the US or in another country? I know we've got clubs here that they've got a sister club in Peru and they tend each other's meetings. So right now what they did was 2 weeks are in the US and 2 weeks are in Peru. And a lot of the club members have decided to join each other's clubs and they're going to be able to get up to speed enough where they're going to have it and be able to meet weekly and that kind of thing. So maybe if there's an opportunity to do it from a different country, see how you do it versus that. That's another way, because burnout is absolutely one of the things that we're experiencing all over. Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Rob?
I was going to make the other country comment as well. I used to be stationed in Germany and I stumbled on the base club there and they meet at 7 p.m. local time, which was noon here. So I could go to a lunchtime club meeting at an evening club in Germany. So I was just going to mention that as an option, but obviously same thing that Tam said.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay. All right. So how can blind eye syndrome derail your focus? Okay, Rob?
I think if you try to solve too many problems at once, right? If you look and you see like, wow, they're not doing this right, and there's no agenda, there's no this, there's no that, and they don't greet guests, they don't do this. You say, I've got to solve these problems by week 2. Again, you're kind of shooting all over the place. Plus, you're kind of coming at them like, hey, you're doing Toastmasters completely wrong. I know all the correct answers, and there's 17 of them. Here they are, and you're really not going to get anywhere with even one, much less all of them. So having that attitude where you think you see everything and you could be right, don't get me wrong, but still find a way, okay, what's the thing we want to work on first and help the club. And again, the ways you discussed, I would totally say the same way with working with influencers and kind of building that up, not trying to be the one person that knows all the right answers. But that's where I've seen folks struggle before when they try to do too much at once.
That's a good one.
Very good. Okay. All right. So since your club is definitely going to have to take an outsider's look at their own club, how do you go about calling their attention to areas of concern? What is the nicest way you can do that?
Give them a scenario of what you're seeing and ask them, because a lot of times they don't realize this is what they're doing. And so give them a scenario. What do you think of this? And like, what are you doing? You know, how are you handling the things? And then they get the aha, the ones that I've dealt with, that I'm dealing with, gets that aha moment. Is like, oh, are we doing that? Because as I said before, sometimes they don't even realize what they're doing because they have faltered in, I don't have enough members, so I'm, fall into a not so nice way of doing Toastmasters just to get by.
Right.
My home club, we normally have 20 people. And for some reason, winter time is a time where everybody kind of like falls off. And I'm tired, I'm not gonna get onto Zoom. And it was worse before when we were able to meet. They would fall off until the weather got better. I'm not driving in that. You know, so even though we had that prior to COVID, we're still having it with COVID. You know, we're like, it's getting ready to turn cold. I don't know. It's like, turn on, hit the Zoom link, and you boom, you
Look,
It's
there's
easy.
summer pictures in the background. Well, that's a good way to do it. So how do you include your officers and club members in the process of working on your club? Do you do that during a meeting or do you do that outside the meeting? What do you do?
Officer meeting.
I know that
Right.
in at least at least 3 of the clubs, of the 4 that I'm in, everybody that is a member is also an officer. So we have to meet at a different time other than our regular meeting, because otherwise we will just go to an agenda and do that. And it's difficult when we get together that we don't just get together and just talk. We have to have a specialized agenda that focuses everybody's thoughts on what it takes for this club to survive, to be thriving, to be self-sustaining. And it has to start at the very beginning of the meeting every time we meet, because otherwise they lose focus and it's just a time to get together and socialize. Okay, does anybody else have that kind of problem where the clubs, everybody that's in the club is also in an officer? So, yes, Tamsin.
One of my clubs is that way. The other club is almost that way. I think we have 2 members that are not officers, but I suggest absolutely speak about that with the officer meetings. And with our officer meetings, we have very detailed agendas that go out 2 to 3 days prior to. So it includes both a report of what's been going on since the last officer meeting, and then we have the new business, and we also have an old business. So if there was anything left over from the last officer meeting, that goes in the old business section of it, and so we can get caught up on that. And in the new business is when we start discussing whether it's, hey, this time we're going to talk about membership, how are we going to do it? And that's when we all brainstorm as a group of people, and we take things. Then if there are members that are not officers, then we take it to the members at the next meeting. If we are all officers, then again, we're all basically in the same group and we're all talking about it. And one of the things that I try to stress every time, whether I'm a club coach, I'm an area director, or one of the many club officers, is we as officers have to lead by example. If we're an officer and we're not willing to do it, why would any of the guests and or members want to do it? So it's up to us to make sure that we put in that we're going to do all of these roles going weeks out if you can. Some of the clubs we have our agendas out 3 to 4 months in advance. But if we're not willing to step up and do the different roles and saying yes to it, why should any of the members want to do it?
Very good. So without outright telling them what to do, how do you coax some direction and action items from your club and involve as many people as possible? What would you do, Beth?
Sorry, I was looking to say goodbye to Vicky and I only heard the last half of your question. Involving as many people as possible, I heard you say, and bye Vicky if you're still here.
Right. How would you coax some direction and action items from your club and involve as many people as possible without telling them what to do?
Well, today's a good day for that. We had a Moments of Truth. We did our Moments of Truth today. And we got 3 new members in the past week, plus we had 2 guests today. And so that was awesome because we coaxed these people to give us answers. What attracts you to a club? What would keep you? why did you decide to come here? What are you willing to do? And people were saying, well, I'm going to tell all my friends about this. I'm going to, people would say, well, let's have a guest speaker. Well, they'd say a guest said, I know somebody who can be a guest speaker and can talk about topic X. So I think that as much as we as the movers and shakers, and when we started our year this year, we only had one member who wasn't on the executive. The rest of us were on the executive, and I have 2 roles on the executive. Yay me. But the thing is that if we can step back and resist the stepping up and feeling like you've got to do it or it won't get done. And that's part of we've always done it this way. So this is how we're going to do it now. And a bit of an unconscious bias there. We may not be thinking it has to be this way, but we're doing it because that's what we know how to do, and stepping back and letting other people do it. So that's going to be happening going forward. I have a lovely little list of people who are willing to do things, including our new members. And at least one of the guests is going to be joining tomorrow. And he's one of the people, he's one of the people who volunteered of knowing someone who can speak and of sharing his contacts with his contacts, which are completely different than the people in our club. A whole different community. He's going to share stuff with his contacts. So that's our current plan for that.
That sounds good. Okay.
Exciting.
How do you guys celebrate successes? We had one coach that promised a pizza party for each achievement along the way. So if they got, we got our second DCP point in education, so we're going to have a pizza party. Oh, we got our list in, so we're going to have a pizza party or whatever. And they each step along the way help keep the members involved and engaged, and they were successes. Okay, but there will be setbacks. How do you handle setbacks? Barry.
So you're asking me, how do we handle setbacks?
Mm-hmm.
Question. It really depends on in what area the setback is in. Right now, I am dealing with a setback in the sense that my team was on board with us doing many things and going outside of our comfort zone to invite members. Our VP of membership was very engaged in helping us move it along that way. But she's been out for a month with an illness, and there's been nothing done. And I have not been able to motivate people to kind of what I call keep their commitments and do anything. So how I've handled it is I just continue to try to be an example. Like I make sure that I bring at least one member to every meeting, which is something that I've asked them to do. Whether that person becomes a member or not, at least we're bringing people. Even if I bring people who are from other clubs, I've been doing that. And then those people get on and say, well, how did you get here? And they said, well, Mary Evans Battle invited me, people from India and other places. So I do have a tendency, though, to if I cannot get other people to move, then I do tend to always try to do it myself. And I know that I should not, but I just can't just sit there and do nothing. So that's how I handle it.
Sometimes when we're on these Zoom meetings, then there will be a question that I'll ask, and then I have to sit on my hands and say, don't answer, leave them a chance. They're thinking, don't answer, and they answer. And it's so hard because people hate that dead air. And it happens whether you're on a Zoom meeting or whether you're asking for volunteers. You just pose the question, who would like to be in charge of blah, 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 blah. See, what kind of people do you need for your committee? You need somebody for food and for registrations and for special guest type of incentives, you've got a guest coming, what can you do? Oh, we can give them a gift basket, we can do stuff like that. So and they'll sit there and say, I'm not going to do it. Don't look her in the eye. Don't look her. It's just like table topics. Don't look her in the eye. Don't look her in the eye. But eventually somebody stands up and says, okay, I'll suppose I'll do it. And then you go, that's great. Who do you want on your team? And at that point, she's looking around going, okay, let's see. So it mostly, have to be comfortable with those silences, and you have to be comfortable not jumping up. Okay, Mary.
Just in following up with that, then what do you do? Because another club that I'm in, I did that. I just really said that club, there's systems in place. They should utilize those systems. And we're on the 3rd month and they have not done it. So I'm kind of itching again to just say, okay, I'll just do it. So what do you do in that case? Do you just let it go, or do you go ahead and step up?
There are some times when you ask the question and nobody wants to step up and they're all waiting for somebody else to do it. Then you ask the second question, is there a better way we could do it than what I'm proposing? And then wait, because they're either going to have to volunteer to do what you're doing, or they have to volunteer a solution. And you still have to wait. And it's hard. Yes, Rob.
One thing that I've noticed too is that like it's almost like an email. When you send an email to 100 people, no one will respond. When you send an email to one person will respond, which is a better response total. And when you're in a club and you stand in front of the club and say, hey, who wants to have this? Who wants to be the person that greets guests? And everybody just looks at each other. But if you walk up to Bev and say, Bev, would you be willing to try to be the guest greeter for the next 3 meetings and see how that works out? And here's a guest card. And so you use this and work that process and get a person to be willing to take on that one thing. That doesn't always solve it. Don't get me wrong. You're going to get no's there too, but you have a better shot sometimes, especially when you've tried the broad shot and no one said yes, one-on-one trying to get somebody to do something.
Okay. All right. Since we are way over when I intended this meeting to be over, I'm going to ask, is there any questions that you guys would like to ask?
Do you have a magic wand that you can just throw at each one of our clubs to get them in?
I explained that last week. I'm fresh.
Oh, look, Rob got one.
Whoosh, whoosh. Okay, you are now distinguished.
Works one time every 10 years. That's it.
Yeah. Uh-oh, there it went.
Somewhere a club just became distinguished. I don't know.
Okay. All right. I will be sending this recording out sometime in the next week, along with our focus for next meeting, which will be the second Monday in November, which would be November 8th. November 8th. Okay, so there is no meeting next week, obviously, right? Okay, because that's the first Monday, and then we have November 8th, and then we have November 22nd, and then we will have one meeting in December, which would be the 13th, because everything after that is so holiday packed that nobody has ever managed to come to a meeting during those 2 weeks. Anyway, so our next one will be November 8th. And then the 22nd. Okay. All right. And thank you, everybody. You had some great ideas and some good stuff. Did you all get something good out of this tonight? I know you contributed a lot. I enjoyed that. It was good participation tonight. Good job. Yay.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you.
All righty.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.
Okay. And stop recording.